In the far reaches of the galaxy, the Drexonian Empire had ruled for centuries. Their power was unmatched, their fleet enormous, and their soldiers feared by all who lived under their shadow. No one dared challenge them, until now. The humans had always been the underdogs. Their technology was far behind the Drexonians, their ships smaller, their weapons weaker. But humanity had one thing the Drexonians did not: ingenuity. The Drexonian High Council gathered in their grand war room. Massive screens displayed the latest intelligence from the human colonies. The news was startling, but to the Drexonians, it was laughable. A human ship, the Aegis, was rumored to be the last line of defense for the human colonies. It was small, out of date, and outmatched by their fleet. The Drexonians laughed at the idea that such a ship could stand against them. General Zarak, the Empire's most respected military leader, scoffed at the reports. "A ship that size, no weapon that small can even scratch our fleet," he said, shaking his head. "This Aegis will be nothing more than an insect to crush underfoot." The council agreed. They were so sure of their victory that they didn't even bother to fully prepare for the encounter. It was, in their eyes, a mere formality. They would send a small fleet to destroy this so-called warship and send a message to the humans: don't challenge the Drexonian Empire. But there was something about the Aegis that made Captain Samuel Kane and his crew believe otherwise. Unlike the Drexonians, the humans didn't rely on sheer numbers or overwhelming firepower. They built their ships with something more: creativity. They had taken their weaknesses and turned them into strengths. Captain Kane stood at the command center of the Aegis, staring out at the stars. He knew what the Drexonians thought of them. He knew they believed the Aegis was just a joke, but they didn't understand. The Aegis wasn't about firepower. It was about brains, stealth, and precision. It was about making the impossible possible. His crew, too, understood this. Every member had a different skill, from engineering to tactics. Together, they were the perfect team. Each knew that the upcoming battle would not be fought on the terms of strength, but on the terms of wit. They were ready to show the Drexonians that humans could think circles around them. As the Aegis set course toward Drexonian space, Captain Kane couldn't help but smile. He knew the Drexonians were underestimating them, and that was exactly what he needed. Because when you underestimate your opponent, that's when you make the biggest mistake of all. The first move was about to be made, and the Drexonians had no idea what was coming. The Drexonian Empire was certain they would crush the human ship, the Aegis. They laughed at the idea that such a small ship could pose any real threat to their mighty fleet. But what they didn't know was that the Aegis was not just any ship. It was a product of human ingenuity, a secret weapon they never saw coming. Captain Samuel Kane stood on the bridge of the Aegis, staring at the stars ahead. He knew that the Drexonians had underestimated them. The Aegis wasn't built for sheer power. It was built for speed, stealth, and surprise. It was a ship that relied on strategy rather than strength. Behind him, the crew was working quickly and efficiently. Lieutenant Jessa Lee, the ship's chief engineer, was focused on the ship's power core. She had modified the Aegis with experimental technology, small, powerful engines that could generate massive bursts of speed when needed. The Aegis might not have the firepower of a Drexonian warship, but it had something more important: agility. On the other side of the bridge, Commander James Farrow was coordinating with the ship's tactical officer, Mia Park. She was studying the Drexonian fleet's movements on the holographic map. The humans had only a few ships at their disposal, but they didn't need numbers. They had brains, and that was all they needed. "We'll be in Drexonian space in 2 hours," Farrow said, his voice steady. "What's the plan, Captain?" Kane turned to face his crew, his eyes filled with determination. "We won't win by fighting them head-on. We'll use their own pride against them." The crew nodded. They had trained for this moment, and they trusted their captain. Kane was a brilliant strategist, always thinking several steps ahead. He had designed the Aegis to be a ship of surprises, equipped with cloaking technology, advanced sensors, and weapons that could be deployed quickly and unexpectedly. "We'll approach them under the cover of darkness," Kane continued. "The Aegis is equipped with a cloaking device that should keep us hidden long enough to get close. Once we're in range, we'll hit them hard and fast. The key is precision." Jessa Lee tapped a few keys on her console, confirming that the cloaking system was online. "Cloaking system is ready, Captain. We'll be invisible to their sensors." "Good," Kane said. "This is the perfect time to show them that they can't just ignore humanity." The Aegis was a small warship, but its power lay in its ability to strike quickly and disappear before the enemy could respond. Kane knew that if they played their cards right, they could cripple the Drexonian fleet without firing a single shot. They just had to get close enough and strike with precision. As the crew prepared for the mission ahead, the tension on the bridge was palpable. There was no turning back now. The Drexonian Empire might think they were unbeatable, but the humans had something they didn't, a weapon that could not be measured by size or firepower. Human ingenuity. And that, Kane knew, was enough to change the course of history. The Aegis glided silently through space, its sleek form barely visible against the blackness of the void. Captain Kane stood at the helm, watching as the stars streaked by in the distance. The mission was about to begin. His crew was ready, and the Drexonian fleet was waiting ahead. "Captain, we've entered Drexonian space," Commander Farrow announced from his station. "We're on course to intercept the enemy fleet." Kane nodded, his eyes narrowing with focus. "Good. Prepare the cloaking system. Once we're within range, activate it. I don't want them to see us until it's too late." Lieutenant Lee, the ship's engineer, confirmed. "Cloaking system is online and ready, Captain." The tension on the bridge was thick. Every crew member knew how high the stakes were. The Drexonian fleet was formidable, and they had no idea what the Aegis was capable of. Kane's plan was risky, but it was the only one that could work. They had to rely on surprise, speed, and precision. Minutes passed, and the Aegis crept closer to the Drexonian fleet. Through the ship's sensors, the crew could see the massive warships ahead. The Drexonians were unaware of their presence, their ships slowly moving through space, unaware of the impending danger. "Activate cloaking now," Kane ordered, his voice steady. The Aegis shimmered briefly as the cloaking system engaged, and then it disappeared from the Drexonians' radar. The ship was now invisible, a ghost in the stars. Kane smiled to himself. The first part of the plan was a success. "We're in position," Mia Park, the tactical officer, said. "The Valgar, their flagship, is right in front of us. If we strike now, we can cripple their lead ship and send their entire fleet into disarray." Kane looked at the tactical map on the screen. The Drexonian flagship, the Valgar, was the heart of their fleet. If they could take it out, the rest of the fleet would lose their leader and their direction. The Drexonians would be confused, and the Aegis could pick them off one by one. "Prepare the weapons. Target the Valgar's engines," Kane ordered. "Once we hit them, we need to be ready to move fast." The crew worked quickly, their hands moving over their stations. The Aegis had small but powerful weapons, and its cloaking system allowed them to strike first without giving the enemy a chance to retaliate. "Ready, Captain," Lieutenant Lee said. "Weapons are locked on target. Fire." The Aegis cannons erupted with a sudden burst of energy. The blast hit the Valgar's engine section, sending a shockwave through space. The enemy flagship shuddered as smoke and sparks erupted from its engines. The Valgar veered off course, its crew scrambling to control the damage. The Drexonians were in chaos. The humans had struck without warning, and now the Drexonians realized they were under attack. Panic spread through the fleet as they tried to regroup, but the Aegis was already gone, vanishing back into the darkness, just as quickly as it had appeared. "Target hit," Mia Park reported, a grin on her face. "We've caused serious damage to their flagship." Captain Kane stood tall, his mind already calculating the next move. The Aegis had delivered its first blow, and now the Drexonian fleet was in disarray. This wasn't just a battle. It was a message. Humanity was no longer the underdog. They were a force to be reckoned with. The Aegis vanished once again, disappearing into the vastness of space. The Draxonians had been mocked, and now they were about to face the true power of human ingenuity. The Aegis had struck the Draxonian fleet with lightning speed, damaging their flagship and sending shockwaves through their ranks. But Captain Kane knew this was only the beginning. He had drawn first blood, but there was still much to be done. The Draxonians would not give up easily. On the bridge of the Aegis, the crew worked quickly, their minds focused on the next phase of the plan. Captain Kane stood in front of the tactical map, his brow furrowed as he studied the movements of the Draxonian fleet. The Vulgar had been seriously damaged, but the rest of their ships were still intact and regrouping. They would be coming for the Aegis with everything they had. "We need to make them think we're weak," Kane said, his voice calm but firm. "We'll let them pursue us. Draw them into the perfect position." "Are you sure about this, Captain?" Commander Farrow asked, his voice laced with concern. "If they catch us, we could be overwhelmed." Kane turned to face him. "I'm sure. The Draxonians are arrogant. They believe they can crush us easily, and that will be their mistake. We'll set the perfect trap." The crew nodded, understanding the plan. They knew the Draxonians would underestimate the Aegis again, and that would give them the advantage. It was time to turn the tables. "We'll let them chase us into the asteroid field," Kane continued. "There we'll be able to use the terrain to our advantage. The Aegis is small and fast, but we need to make them believe we're running out of options." Lieutenant Lee, the ship's engineer, was already working on the ship's power systems. "We'll be able to reach the asteroid field in about 10 minutes. The cloaking system is ready to go, and the engines are at full power." Kane glanced at the view screen, watching as the Draxonian fleet began to regroup. The Vulgar was struggling, but the other ships were closing in. Kane knew it was time to make his move. "All right," he said. "Activate the cloaking system. Let's get their attention. We'll make them think we're retreating." The Aegis slowly began to move away from the Draxonian fleet, but it did so with a sense of deliberate slowness, almost as if it were retreating in fear. The Draxonians took the bait, their ships closing in to finish what they believed would be an easy victory. From behind the veil of the cloaking device, the Aegis moved toward the asteroid field, its small size barely noticeable among the floating debris. The Draxonian fleet followed, their warships hungry for the kill. But Kane wasn't running. He was luring them into a trap. "We're almost there," Mia Park said, her fingers flying over her console. "Once they're in the field, we'll activate the mines. It's a perfect setup." The Aegis slipped deeper into the asteroid field, waiting for the perfect moment. The Draxonian ships followed, unaware of the danger that lay ahead. Kane's plan was coming together. He spoke into the comms. "When they get close, we hit them with everything we've got." The tension in the air was thick, and the crew could feel it. They knew the next few minutes would decide everything. If the plan worked, the Draxonian fleet would be caught in the perfect trap, one they would never see coming. The Aegis was about to show the Draxonians just how dangerous it could be when it had the advantage. The Aegis drifted silently in the asteroid field, its cloaking system keeping it hidden from the Draxonian fleet. The massive warships moved in a tight formation, unaware of the trap that was closing in around them. Captain Kane stood at the front of the bridge, his eyes fixed on the screen. He was calm, but he knew the stakes. One mistake, and the entire crew could be wiped out in an instant. The Draxonians had taken the bait. They were closing in, their ships moving through the asteroid field with confidence. They thought they had the Aegis cornered. They thought it was over. "Once they're in position, we hit them with everything," Kane muttered to himself. "And make sure they never forget this moment." The crew worked with precision, knowing that every second counted. Lieutenant Lee was monitoring the cloaking system, ready to deactivate it at the perfect moment. Mia Park, the tactical officer, watched the Draxonian ships closely, waiting for the right opportunity to strike. "Captain," Park said, her voice steady but sharp, "they're almost in range. We've got about 2 minutes before they pass the last cluster of asteroids." Kane nodded, his eyes locked on the screen. The tension in the air was palpable. The Drexonians were so sure of themselves, so certain that victory was theirs, but they were walking right into the trap. Kane couldn't help but smile. "Activate the mines," he ordered, "and prepare to fire." The mines hidden among the asteroids were the Aegis' secret weapon. Small but powerful, they were designed to be activated with pinpoint accuracy. Once triggered, they would cause a chain reaction, disabling the Drexonian ships and creating chaos in their ranks. As the mines began to activate, the Drexonian ships continued to move forward, unaware of the impending disaster. They were focused on the Aegis, thinking it was fleeing, easy prey. They were so close to victory, but Kane had other plans. "Now," Kane commanded. In an instant, the Aegis deactivated its cloaking system. The Drexonian fleet was in full view, and they saw the mines just as they exploded. The asteroid field erupted into a blaze of energy as the mines went off one by one, creating a massive shockwave. The Drexonian ships were caught in the blast, their shields faltering as explosions tore through their ranks. The chaos was immediate. The fleet scattered in panic, their commanders shouting orders to regain control. The Aegis took full advantage of the confusion. The ship darted between the remaining Drexonian warships, unleashing a volley of energy blasts. The small, agile warship was a nightmare in the heart of the chaos. The Drexonians couldn't react fast enough. But something unexpected happened. For the first time, the Drexonians hesitated. Fear rippled through their ranks as they realized that this wasn't just a human ship, it was a force to be reckoned with. The Drexonian Empire, long known for its strength and pride, had just met something that they couldn't crush so easily. The humans were smarter, faster, and more determined than they had ever imagined. The Aegis continued its assault, picking off Drexonian ships one by one. The fleet was disorganized, their pride shattered. Kane knew this was their moment. They had made the Drexonians feel fear for the first time in centuries. "Captain," Mia Park said, her voice filled with awe, "we've got them on the run. They're retreating." Captain Kane stood tall, his heart pounding in his chest. The Drexonian Empire had underestimated them, and now they were paying the price. The battle was far from over, but the Aegis had just delivered a blow that would echo across the galaxy. The Aegis had struck hard, leaving the Drexonian fleet in chaos, but Captain Kane knew this was only the beginning. The Drexonians were strong, and they wouldn't just give up. Their pride had been wounded, and now they would retaliate with everything they had. The human success so far had only made them more determined to crush the Aegis. On the bridge, Kane could feel the change in the air. The crew was tense, their eyes constantly scanning the displays for any sign of the Drexonian response. Mia Park, the tactical officer, was the first to speak. "Captain, they're regrouping. The Volgar is still operational, and the other ships are preparing for a full assault," she reported, her fingers flying across her console. "They'll be ready to strike in about 10 minutes. Kane's face hardened. "I knew they wouldn't back down that easily. Get ready, everyone. This is where it gets dangerous." The Aegis had done damage, but the Drexonians were now focused on the one thing they had left: destroying the human ship. They weren't going to take any more chances. They were bringing their entire fleet, and they were angry. Captain Kane turned to his crew, his voice steady but urgent. "We've been lucky so far. Now it's time to put everything we've got into play. We're not running. We're going to fight. We'll take down as many of them as we can, but we have to be smart." Lieutenant Lee nodded, working quickly to ensure the ship's engines were ready for their next move. The Aegis was fast and small, but it couldn't keep dodging forever. The Drexonians would eventually corner them, and Kane knew they had to strike first, before the enemy could regroup. "Captain, we're running low on power," Lee warned. "If we keep using the cloaking system and our weapons at this rate, we'll be at half power within an hour." Kane nodded. He had anticipated this. The Aegis was designed for quick strikes, not prolonged battles. They had to take down as many Drexonian ships as possible before they ran out of energy. "We'll make our shots count," he said firmly. "Prepare to engage the fleet head-on, but we'll use the asteroid field to our advantage again. The terrain is still on our side." The crew went into action, preparing for the upcoming battle. The tension was high. The Drexonian ships were closing in, and the Aegis was going to have to hold its ground. "We'll need to make our first move fast," Mia Park said. "If we hit them while they're still trying to reorganize, we might be able to take out a few more before they can fully counterattack." Captain Kane agreed. "Get in position. Aim for their engines. We'll make it hard for them to run, just like before." The Aegis moved swiftly into position, its crew working like a well-oiled machine. The Drexonian fleet was closing in on them, their weapons charged and ready. But the humans were ready for the challenge. They wouldn't back down. "Activate cloaking," Kane commanded. "Let's make our first move before they realize what's happening." The Aegis once again vanished into the darkness of space, slipping unnoticed behind the Drexonian ships. The enemy was too focused on their anger to notice the silent threat moving toward them. For a moment, the galaxy felt still, the calm before the storm. The humans were about to strike again, and this time, the Drexonians would not see it coming. The Aegis was now invisible, hidden among the shadows of space. Captain Kane stood firm at the helm, his hand steady on the controls, his mind calculating the next move. The Drexonian fleet was coming closer, and the time had come to strike again. "We're in position, Captain," Mia Park said, her voice calm but sharp as ever. "The Drexonian ships are still trying to reorganize after the last attack. We have a small window." Kane nodded, his gaze never leaving the display screen. The Drexonian fleet was more disorganized than ever, their pride bruised and their leaders scrambling to regain control. The Aegis had delivered a blow they never expected, and now the humans were going to finish the job. "Target their engines again," Kane ordered. "We need to make sure they can't escape. Take out their power." Lieutenant Lee tapped rapidly on her console. "Targeting engines now, Captain. The Aegis is ready to fire." "Then fire," Kane said, his voice unwavering. The Aegis weapons fired once again, hitting the heart of the Drexonian fleet. Energy blasts shot out, piercing through the hulls of enemy ships and creating massive explosions. The Aegis darted between the chaos, its small size allowing it to weave effortlessly through the confusion. The Drexonians had no chance to respond before the Aegis had already struck and disappeared back into the darkness. "Direct hit," Mia Park shouted. "One of their larger ships is going down." The Drexonian fleet was in full retreat now, their formation shattered and their ships scattering in every direction. The Aegis had done its damage, and now it was time to finish them off. The Drexonians were struggling. Their once proud empire was now in tatters. Their commanders were scrambling to regain control, but nothing seemed to work. They had underestimated the humans at every turn, and now they were paying the price. "Captain," Park said, her voice filled with surprise, "the fleet is breaking apart. The remaining ships are falling back. They're abandoning the mission." Kane's heart raced with excitement. The Aegis had done it. The Drexonian fleet, the pride of their empire, was retreating, and the humans had forced them to do it. "They never thought it would come to this," Kane muttered. "Their pride made them careless." The Aegis moved with precision, picking off the remaining Drexonian ships as they fled. It was a final strike that left no room for doubt. The humans had proven that they could defeat an empire, one that had ruled over countless worlds for centuries. "Captain," Mia Park said, "we've done it. The Drexonian fleet is in full retreat. We've crippled their forces." Kane let out a breath, his mind still racing. The battle wasn't over, but this was the turning point. The Drexonian Empire had never faced an enemy like humanity, and now the Aegis had struck a blow that would forever change the course of history. The Drexonians will be weakened for years, Kane said, his voice filled with quiet pride. And the rest of the galaxy will know who they're dealing with. The Aegis remained vigilant, ready to move at a moment's notice. But for now, Kane allowed himself a brief moment to take in the victory. The Drexonian Empire had been knocked down, and humanity had risen to show the galaxy what they were capable of. The Aegis had not just survived. It had delivered the death blow to an empire. The Drexonian fleet was in chaos. The Aegis had struck at their heart, crippled their flagship, and sent the rest of their ships into a disorganized retreat. For the first time in their history, the Drexonian Empire was not in control. But they would not surrender easily. On the bridge of the Aegis, Captain Kane stood tall, his eyes fixed on the screens in front of him. The Drexonians had underestimated the humans before, but now they were realizing just how dangerous humanity could be when pushed to the limit. "We've got them on the run," Mia Park said, her fingers flying over the controls. "But we can't let up. If they regroup, we're in trouble." Kane nodded. "I know. We've taken out their flagship, but their fleet is still dangerous. We need to stop them from escaping, or they'll rebuild and come back stronger." The crew worked quickly, preparing for the next strike. Lieutenant Lee monitored the Aegis systems, ensuring that everything was ready. The ship had taken some damage during the earlier battle, but it was still operational. The crew had pushed the ship to its limits, but now was the moment they had to push even harder. "Target the remaining fleet," Kane ordered. "We can't let them recover. Aim for their power cores. We need to take them out, fast." The Drexonian ships, though damaged, were still a threat. They were powerful, heavily armed, and relentless. If they escaped, they would return in force. The Aegis had to act quickly. There was no room for mistakes. "We're in position," Mia Park said, "ready to fire." Kane gave a quick nod. "Fire when ready." The Aegis cannons fired, sending powerful energy blasts toward the remaining Drexonian ships. The blasts struck their targets, causing explosions that lit up the dark expanse of space. The Drexonian fleet staggered under the force of the attack, and some ships began to break apart. The humans were closing in for the kill. But the Drexonians were not done yet. Their leaders, though shaken, quickly regrouped and gave orders to fight back. The remaining ships turned to face the Aegis, their weapons firing in retaliation. "We've got incoming," Mia Park shouted. "They're coming in full force." "Stay on course," Kane ordered calmly. "We've got one shot at this. Hold steady." The Aegis continued its attack, dodging incoming fire and taking down one Drexonian ship after another. The crew worked together in perfect harmony, their determination driving them forward. They had proven their worth already, but now they were about to finish the job. "Captain, they're retreating," Mia Park reported, astonished. "The fleet is pulling back." Kane's eyes narrowed. The Drexonians were not completely defeated yet, but they were broken. Their leaders had realized they could not win this battle. They had underestimated humanity's strength, and now they were paying the price. "We've done it," Lieutenant Lee said, a note of disbelief in her voice. "The Drexonian fleet is scattered. They're retreating into deep space." Kane stood silently, staring at the wreckage of the Drexonian ships. The battle was far from over, but the turning point had come. The humans had shown the Drexonians that they were not the all-powerful empire they once were. Humanity had dealt a blow that would be felt across the galaxy for years to come. "We've taken the first step," Kane said quietly, "but we have to make sure they don't come back. This war isn't over until they're truly defeated." The Aegis crew knew that their fight was far from finished, but for the first time, they saw the true power of human ingenuity and strength. The Drexonian Empire had been broken, and humanity had risen to the challenge. The Aegis moved silently through the dark void of space, its crew working together like a well-oiled machine. The battle had been long, and the Drexonian fleet was on the brink of collapse. Their pride had been shattered, their fleet in disarray, and now Captain Kane and his crew were preparing for the final strike. The Drexonian Empire had been a symbol of power for centuries. They had crushed every enemy in their path, leaving nothing but fear and destruction in their wake. But today, the humans were showing them something they had never seen before: resilience, creativity, and the courage to fight against overwhelming odds. "Captain," Mia Park said, her voice steady, "the remaining Drexonian ships are retreating toward their home planet. If we strike now, we can cripple their entire fleet before they can regroup." Kane studied the tactical map on the screen. The Drexonian fleet was weak, scattered, and unorganized. They had nowhere left to run. The Aegis had delivered blow after blow, and now it was time for the final act. "We finish this now," Kane said. "We hit them where it hurts. We take out their power. They won't be able to rebuild after this." Lieutenant Lee, the ship's engineer, nodded. "All systems are ready, Captain. We'll have full power for one final assault." The crew worked quickly, each member knowing that this was the moment they had been waiting for. The Drexonians had underestimated them, but now, humanity was about to deliver the final blow. Kane's plan was simple but deadly. Take out the Drexonian Central Command Station, the heart of their fleet, and leave them powerless. "Prepare the weapons," Kane ordered. "Target their Central Command Station and disable their entire fleet. We need to make sure they can never threaten humanity again." The Aegis moved into position, its cloaking system keeping it hidden from the Drexonian sensors. The remaining fleet was vulnerable. Their communication systems were in chaos, and their ships were easy targets. "Once we're in range," Park said, "we'll fire at their command station and take out their communications. Without those, they'll have no way to coordinate a defense." "Understood," Kane replied. "We're going to make sure this empire crumbles once and for all." The Aegis engines hummed as it approached the heart of the Drexonian fleet. The remaining ships were scattered, easy to target. The final strike was only moments away. "Target locked," Mia Park said. "Firing in 3, 2, 1. The Aegis unleashed a torrent of energy, striking the Central Command Station with a devastating blow. The explosion was massive, sending shockwaves through the remaining Drexonian ships. The heart of their fleet was gone, and with it, their ability to communicate, coordinate, or fight back. "We've done it," Lieutenant Lee said, her voice filled with awe. "Their entire fleet is paralyzed. The Drexonian Empire is finished." Kane stood silently, watching the devastation unfold. The battle had been long, but humanity had triumphed. The Drexonians had never expected a small human warship to bring them to their knees. And now, their empire was broken, shattered by the very force they had underestimated. "The Aegis has done its job," Kane said, his voice filled with quiet satisfaction. "We've shown the galaxy that humanity can stand up to any empire. We've proven that we are more than just survivors. We are a force to be reckoned with." The Aegis pulled away from the wreckage of the Drexonian fleet, its crew victorious. The Drexonian Empire was no more, and humanity had claimed its place in the galaxy. Captain Kane knew this was just the beginning. The universe had seen what humans could do when pushed to the limit. The Aegis had delivered the final strike, and now, the galaxy would never forget the name of the human warship that ended an empire. The Aegis drifted silently through space, its mission complete. Captain Kane stood at the helm, his eyes scanning the viewscreen as the remnants of the Drexonian fleet floated in the distance. The once mighty empire was now in ruins, its power shattered by a small human warship and its crew. The galaxy would never be the same again. Kane allowed himself a brief moment of quiet satisfaction. The battle had been fierce, but in the end, humanity had triumphed. They had taken on the Drexonian Empire, an empire that had crushed every opponent in its path for centuries, and emerged victorious. It was a victory that would echo across the galaxy for years to come. "Captain," Mia Park said, her voice breaking through the silence, "the Drexonian fleet is in full retreat. Their remaining ships are fleeing toward their home planet, but their empire is no longer a threat. We've done it." Kane nodded. "We've ended their reign. They'll never have the strength to attack humanity again." The crew of the Aegis gathered on the bridge, each of them feeling the weight of their achievement. They had all played a part in the victory, and they knew that this moment would be remembered for generations to come. The Drexonian Empire, once the most feared force in the galaxy, had been defeated by a single warship, and it was humanity that had struck the final blow. Lieutenant Lee stepped forward, her face filled with relief. "Captain, the Aegis is stable, and all systems are operational. We're ready to head back to the human colonies whenever you say." Kane turned to face her, his eyes full of pride for his crew. "Let's head back home. We've earned our rest." The journey back to the human colonies was quiet. The Aegis had fought a long and brutal battle, and now it was time for the crew to reflect on their victory. As they sailed through the stars, Captain Kane couldn't help but think about everything they had accomplished. It wasn't just about defeating an empire. It was about proving that humanity could stand up to any challenge, no matter how impossible it seemed. "We've shown them what we're made of," Kane said quietly to his crew. "We've shown the galaxy that humanity is not something to be taken lightly. We've proven that our strength lies not in our numbers, but in our will to fight." Mia Park smiled, and they won't forget it. The Aegis made its way back to the human colonies, its crew still in awe of what they had accomplished. The Drexonian Empire had fallen, and humanity had risen to take its place. The galaxy had seen the power of human ingenuity, resilience, and courage. As the Aegis entered the atmosphere of the human homeworld, the crew could see the bright lights of the colony shining below. It was a symbol of hope, a reminder that no matter how dark the times may seem, humanity would always find a way to rise above. Captain Kane stood at the bridge, gazing out at the stars. The Drexonian Empire was no more, and humanity had earned its place in the galaxy. The Aegis had finished its mission, and the galaxy would never forget the name of the human warship that ended an empire.